All right, we're live. Now let me zoom into that. That's a good shot, right?
Yeah.
That looks great. I'll show you. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's got zoomed in on our face, so it's all 4K.
Okay, excellent.
All right, cool. I guess let's just start over. so,
No worries.
hey, thanks for taking some time out of your day, man. I know, was it like 3 in the morning right now over there, right?
Yeah, it's 2 a.m., but it's all right. I'm a nocturnal creature.
Same with us, man.
Naps.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're like most creative at nighttime ourselves. Like we do a lot of like
Exactly.
music and stuff like that and art stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. And like I said, I've been kind of keeping up with you for about a year now. It started with a piece of art that I got because you know how the true crime world is. Like half of the time, it's all the time. There's some fakes,
Yeah,
reproductions that people are passing off as real. So it felt really good to have you verify and say yes, I did this. And not only that, but finding
yeah,
out after
yeah,
reading the book about it being part of your tarot card series and also being the very
yeah.
first one was super cool.
Hmm.
So I guess
Exactly.
my first question is, when did you get into the whole collecting of true crime artifacts and bones and things like that?
Oh, actually, it depends on what you call collecting stuff. Because as a kid, I would go to graveyards, and sometimes I would find pieces of bones on the ground, and I would pick them up. So maybe it was the start of a collection. I don't know. But specifically memorabilia. It wasn't even a word before. It wasn't even a word in the 80s when I started to get interested in true crime. So, but my very first letter to an inmate was when I was in prison. Actually, I was myself in prison, and I received a letter from an inmate called Patrick Kearney. Patrick Kearney is also known as the trash bag killer, and he's one of California's freeway killers who actually were killing people during the 70s, early 80s. And he had got my address from a collector who was writing me, and he wrote me a letter in perfect French. So I got his letter, and I figured out that I could also write to other prisoners and other serial killers in the US. And this is when I started to write to other inmates around the world. So I wrote to Ramirez, and I wrote to Doc Clark and Bill Soff and plenty of others, mostly in California and Florida. And that's how I actually began to get letters and artwork and stuff from serial killers.
How hard was it to obtain those addresses, being locked up in a facility? Like how what kind of stuff you had to go through to be able to obtain it? Because that's before the internet, really, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, way before the internet, but there were lists circulating among collectors. Actually, when you were in this circle, you quite knew everybody. So
Mm.
of course I knew Merle Allen, who actually was writing to Danny Rowling and Richard too, and you would also always see the same names and the same people who were writing to the same inmates. So, for example, I got Kearney got my address through a guy in Florida, and the same guy gave my address to several other inmates, and this is how it went. I mean, it was the early 90s, so of course there was no access to the internet, and the lists were not a thing. But there were written lists with the addresses of inmates around the world, and my address was among those names. Yeah.
That's what. So exactly what I did playing in bands. You'd meet another band and you trade a contact. So it was the same kind of
Exactly.
concept. It was like, hey, I
Yeah,
got
this is
these four
the main
dudes.
copycat.
Uh,
That 90s movie called Copycat. Have you seen that movie?
I don't think I've definitely heard
Serial
of it. I don't think I've
killer.
ever seen it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's about this copycat killer
Mm.
who is fascinated with cases like the hillside stranglers or stuff like that. So he recreates the murders. And when he's in prison, he actually sends letters to other prisoners.
Mm.
So I thought that it was interesting because it was like my story, my own story, because I was the only inmate actually doing this, writing to serial killers,
Mm.
and they would write back because I don't think that you can actually do it when you're in a prison in the US, writing to another prison in the US. But since I was in France, I could actually get mail from them and send them mail because it was mail from another country. See what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. So, out of all those people that you wrote, who did you connect with the most?
I'd say for me the funniest one was Doc Clark because he has a great sense of humor, and he's a funny guy. This one, and I really like writing with Jan Brady, the Moors murderer, because his letters were really intellectual and. He would write lots and lots of pages about his views on philosophy and history and stuff like that. So that was fascinating. It was a fascinating read. And Danny Rowling, that was a favorite of mine too, because he would send lots of artwork. And also he was friends with Sandra London, who I was working with for a book. I was actually doing artwork for a book, so that was an interesting interaction. Yeah.
No doubt. And you've got some questions pulled up as well.
Yeah, I had.
So she'll read some. These are actually questions people are still posting, even though we're not on the live, that we can read and kind of ask you. And then we have a few ourselves. So I'll let Chelsea take the first one. She's kind of scanning through right now to get a good one.
Yeah, Sasha Muland asked, "How does a convicted killer/cannibal get released?" You're in Europe, obviously, but how do you get released?
Yeah, so I guess her main question is like, how does that happen to be convicted of murder, self-proclaimed cannibal, and grave robber, and now you're out? You know?
Yeah, the system is totally different in Europe, and actually, I wasn't the first. There was a guy way before me who only did like 4 years of prison. He's called Issei Segawa. He's known as the Japanese cannibal.
Yep.
And he killed a Dutch student in Paris, and he only did like 4 or 5 years of prison in total. And they sent him back to Japan.
And he's kind of like a celebrity.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I said he's kind of like a celebrity now over there. You know.
Oh yeah. He even became a porn star.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So yeah, no, he had quite an interesting life. Nowadays he cannot do anything anymore because I think he has some kind of Alzheimer disease or some kind of, I don't know, so some kind of disease, and he's actually not able to do anything anymore. But yeah, there was this guy who actually was released after only a few years. So the standard, for murder, for example, for like, like, I don't know, no case is alike. I mean, no case is similar to another, but usually for murder, you get like between 10 and 15 years in France. That's the average sentence you get. But when you get 10 to 15 years, you actually serve like the 2/3 at least. And there's new laws because there were murders in the 90s that were really brutal in France. And they actually passed new laws for life without parole. So that's a new thing in France since the late 90s. So me, I kind of, my case, it came in between the end of the guillotine, which was like death row, and the beginning of this life without parole thing. So I was in between those periods of the system. So also they assessed me through a panel of psychiatrists, and the psychiatrist said that I had a borderline psychotic condition. And under French law, when you get this kind of condition, you cannot get a full sentence. So, say for example, you commit a crime, and this crime normally you get like 20 years. When you're assessed by the psychiatrist and they determine that you suffer from this and that and this condition, instead of getting 20 years, you get 12. So yeah, that's the French law regarding mental disease or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Talon Ash
But
asked.
then also, sorry, I just wanted to say because I read online all the time that I was convicted of cannibalism. I was not convicted of cannibalism. I was the cannibalism charges were dropped during the prosecution, and they focused on the murder itself because it was two different things. So the prosecution decided not to pursue the cannibalism thing because they wanted to avoid a full irresponsibility mistrial.
Gotcha. So it probably would have played in your favor.
Yeah, exactly. When they determine that you are totally irresponsible on a psychiatric point of view of what you've done, then they drop the charges. You spend like 2 or 3 years in a mental hospital until they decide that you're cured of whatever you're supposed to suffer from. So this is why the prosecution decided not to pursue the cannibalism thing. And anyways, it was a minor thing compared to the murder. So they decided to prosecute the murder. I was convicted of murder, but not cannibalism.
Gotcha.
Anyways, it's not even in the law, cannibalism. It's not even punished by the law. And that's another thing. There's plenty of European countries, and I guess in America too, where cannibalism is not part of the system. It's not punishable. It's not punished by law.
Gotcha.
It's not part of the system.
Gotcha. Well, now that totally understand. And then this is the next question, Nico.
Talon Ash asked, how were you treated in prison after your convictions?
Oh yeah, well, it's totally different in France. So the prison dynamics are totally different from say the US, for example. So usually everybody tries to not to get in the way when somebody is charged with those kind of things because they don't know how the person will react. Say, for example, if I get in a fight in the prison yard because of what I did, they kind of scared that I might bite their face or whatever. I don't know. So usually I was left alone because I'm a big guy. So
yeah.
But it's kind of boring actually in prison. It's always the same day over and over and over and over again. Always you wake up and you know that you're gonna do the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah, there's not even a fight to make it even more interesting, you know. So I saw a guy getting stabbed once, but that's about the only really violent thing I've ever seen in prison in France. So yeah. It's really lame. People think of the worst. They think of those things because they've seen like series like Oz and all those movies, etc. So they imagine there's like somebody getting stabbed every day, but no, it's kind of lame. Everybody stays in his cell. Sometimes they get out to the rec yard and they just walk and run or whatever. Then they get back inside and that the day is over.
Yeah.
So it's pretty boring.
Yeah, it's depressing. That's a long time to be in there. Like, Most I ever did was 90 days in a county jail, and that was absolutely terrible, dude. So I can't imagine
Oh, I can
being,
imagine.
I can't imagine being in somewhere for years, man. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, dude, because it was.
But just like the forward in your book, the justice system, especially over here, is so focused on punishment versus reform.
Yeah.
So it's not meant for rehabilitation. It's not meant to help people. It's meant to be miserable and a punishment. And
And it's
there
big
was
business.
right, and there was talk of people often come out with worse ailments than they went in with, such PTSD and other mental health issues. Do you think that you left relatively unscathed from your time in prison, or was there or do you still kind of suffer the effects from being in there, or have you moved past it or been able to?
On the long term, the thing that you suffer the most is eyesight, because your eyesight just you can't see past prison walls, so you can see from a really long distance, and your eyesight suffers from it. See what I mean? So
Wow.
that's the eyesight that suffers the most. So usually people who spend many years in prison, they you know they need glasses or when they get out. That's but there's a few things like that. Psychologically speaking, yeah, I've had like dreams about jails for many years. I would dream that I would wake up in my cell and it was the same day all over and over again. Kind of like that movie with Bill Murray.
Groundhog Day.
What's it called? Yeah,
Yeah.
that movie. Okay, yeah, that movie. It's that movie, except you're in a cell, so it's even worse.
Right.
Yeah.
See,
And no Bill
so
Murray.
yeah, psychologically, there's an impact, of course, but I mean, I was very young when I was in prison, and I spent those years, so it didn't really affect me in the long run, I guess. But yeah. There were positive aspects to it. I mean, I actually learned how to paint, so that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And I learned how to write, and I learned not to be so impulsive. So that helped me. And there were some good sides to spending all those years inside.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You got another? All right, yeah, I'm gonna read some of the ones I got. These are just random questions that I've got from just sharing it from different people. So what are healthy ways that you've chosen to combat cravings or combat like that other side of you, like now that you're out again?
Well, does that still exist?
Or
Is
does
that
it
still
still exist?
prevalent?
Is that still a part of you? Do you still have those urges?
It's part of me. I'm a big, I have this theory about a thing called Dharma. Okay, Dharma, it's from Hindu philosophy, and it basically says that you are on Earth to accomplish a mission or for a purpose, but there's no moral. It's not about moral, good or evil. It's just that you're there for something, okay? And for example, if you were born a bank robber, then your purpose in life is to rob banks, okay? And when you start to do something different, this is how bad things start, okay? And this is when you feel unbalanced, and this is when you feel frustration, and this is when you lose control. And the demons are still inside of me, of course, but I have found a way to tame them, and I've found a way to actually use them in a creative way. So there were a few moments also in my life where I acted as a big brother for kids who had really dark thoughts, okay, and you know, due to my position, they write to me and I say, okay, I really want to murder people. I have all those dark fantasies inside. And most of the time I tell them, if you ever act out on those fantasies, you will end up in jail. There's no, you know, no secret formula for murder. So you will end up in jail. And who is going to win this battle? It's not you. It's the ones who will put you in jail. So you will lose. And if you want to win this, if you want to win, if you want to actually reclaim your life, use this dark energy inside of you to do something creative. So I think that I help several persons to not to kill or do really dark things. So okay, maybe that's my purpose in life. Maybe this is why I'm here. Just to help them tame their demons and find a way to use them for something creative.
That was good, man. I like that response a lot. What was your childhood like? Like, how was it growing up? Like, at what point? And we read a little bit of the book, so I got to read about, I guess it was your granddad. Do you think that was
Yeah.
kind of the turning point when, you really kind of started to play into those feelings, or after that happened and people were already kind of accusing you of that?
I think from the start it was doomed to fail. The this thing, the family life, because my parents were really special. They still, well, my mom is still alive, but my dad passed away a few years ago, and the entire family is weird. So I don't think that they really wanted me as a child, and they didn't know how to show that they had affection for me. So maybe I suffered from that lack of affection. They never said like "I love you," never hugged me or anything. So maybe if you're into psychology and shit, maybe you would say, yeah, that's definitely why this guy became that way. But I do not believe in psychology. For me, psychology it's not a science, it's a faith, like religion. It's not based, for me, it's not based on hard facts. It just, and, and I think that psychology it can be a tool for very simple personalities and people who are predictable. But I think that I not I do not fit in that category of people. I think that I'm totally unpredictable in terms of, for example, dangerosity or whatever. People cannot say what I'm going to do in 1 year in terms of, you know, going back to my old ways or whatever. They just can't.
Yeah.
And only me can decide what I can do. And even me, I don't know sometimes. I just don't know. So of course, my childhood was complicated in terms of emotions, and I don't have many memories because memories are linked to emotions. You usually remember what times when you were happy or times when something really cool happened to you or something really bad happened to you. But for me, I don't have many childhood memories because it was like walking in a thick fog, you know. I have memories of buildings where we lived and places, but very, very faint. And sometimes I don't even remember the faces of the people who were around me. I would be totally unable to give you the name of one of my teachers or even a classmate or even a close friend because I totally forgot everything about my childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. You got one?
Do you have a question? Mary Lou asked, what is the coolest thing that you had found while grave robbing?
coolest thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many beautiful graves in France.
Mm.
And the most beautiful I've ever seen were in a graveyard that's right next to the Tower Eiffel.
Mm.
And it's a small cemetery that has lots of mausoleums.
Mm.
And those mausoleums, most of them were built by Russian immigrants during the Russian Revolution at the beginning of the last century. So they were basically refugees, those people, and they were really rich because most of them were part of the Russian aristocracy. So they built those magnificent Orthodox mausoleums.
Mm.
So they were filled with icons and Russian saints and all those kind of things. So, and it was really nicely decorated inside with golden stuff. And so I really like to actually get inside those crypts and spend some time in there. But yeah, I think that you would expect me to say what was the coolest thing that I actually found inside a coffin or something like that. But usually it's mostly bones. So yeah, at the time when I was a teenager doing this, it was really cool. Yeah, but nowadays I have plenty of skulls in my cabinet, my glass cabinet. So I'm not so impressed by skulls and bone, etc. I still love collecting them and owning them and holding them between my hands, but it's not the same as when I was a teenager, opening graves and actually seeing the things inside the coffin. So, yeah.
And just so you know, I just saw a Zoom thing pop up and said the call ends in 10 minutes. So I guess they cut it off maybe because it's the free app or whatever. So if we get to that and we have a cutoff, then I'll just call you back and I'll start another recording until we get through everything. Just
Right.
if in case it cuts us off. So this has been a big question from a lot of people, and that's what does human flesh taste like?
Oh yeah, is the question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a very candid answer about this. I think it tastes. It just depends on how you season it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
otherwise, how would you define beef compared to, I don't know, pork? See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's differences in flavor. Flavor is unique. Okay, I've often compared it to horse meat because there's a sweetness to it, and at the same time, there's a lot of fibers. But maybe it would also depend on the ethnicity of the person because I don't know. I haven't tried people from different ethnic backgrounds. I've read somewhere that there was this guy who went around the world during the Great Discovery. So he went to all those Pacific islands and he met those cannibal tribes. So he tried meat from those tribes, from people from those tribes, and it was a Caucasian guy, but he actually ate, people from Africa, people from the Pacific Islands, and other Caucasian guys.
Mm-hmm.
And you would tell that people tasted different according to their ethnicity. And the worst taste was from the Caucasian people because they tasted worse than, for example, people from certain Pacific islands who tasted really sweet. I don't know
We put
why.
so much shit in our
or
bodies.
If it depends on the diet or
Yeah.
the countries or
Probably the diet.
Processed foods and chemicals, and I'm sure we would taste terrible too.
So do you still have the cravings for that? Do you still, and how do you combat those?
Well, if there's, but like,
um,
or given the opportunity, would you partake again?
all right, I'm really into this German case. It's about that guy called Armin Maives. He was a computer engineer.
Mm-hmm.
and he met this guy online, okay, and the guy he met had this fantasy of being eaten.
Mm-hmm.
So he invited him to his place, and he had him sign some kind of how would you call that? Some kind
Contract.
of consent form.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, and he filmed him. They filmed themselves. Actually, he cut off his private parts, and they tried to cook it. It didn't taste good, so they decided to go to the next step, and he actually had to slit his throat, and then he cut him up, and he kept the meat in his freezer for a period of 6 or 7 months. So he tried the meat in every possible way. He actually fried it, and he boiled it. He had actually he was using his mother's cookbook
Mm-hmm.
for the recipes, and he tried every single recipe in the cookbook.
Mm.
So yeah, that's definitely something that, you know, my experience with the whole thing is totally different, because me, I was working in that morgue, and I was just, you know, picking up really small strips of muscle like that big from the abdominal cavity, because I was stitching the bodies up, and there was, you know, plenty of tissue. Normally the tissue goes to the bin, and the bin goes to the cremation thing. But I would, you know, either eat them in the autopsy room, or bring them home and eventually fry them. But it wasn't that sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And but the thing is that I would often do it for a period of 7 months, 8 months. So, but it was, the quantities themselves were really small. So I wouldn't say that I had the same kind of experience as Army, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Or Sagawa. Sagawa, he literally ate everything in his girlfriend. Well, girlfriend, she wasn't his girlfriend. He wished. But no, he actually ate meat from her back, from her buttocks, from her legs, so the entire dish. Um, I sound awful, but no, I don't have this experience. But yeah, the cravings, it's not a craving, it's just curiosity. It was curiosity at first. Then it became very, I don't know, you know, when you do those kind of things, you definitely don't feel human anymore.
Mm.
And you see other people as cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was taking the subway, going to work, and I was seeing all the humans around me, and I would not see them as human people or people. I would just see their meat structure,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So yeah, it sets you apart, definitely. And maybe it's that feeling that sometimes I would miss later on. This feeling of power, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how to call it.
Mm.
But it's not the tasty things.
Yeah. The
It's
the
the rush.
feeling it gives you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still feel a disconnect to like people, family, and like society as a whole?
Society, definitely, definitely. I'm not part of society anymore. I tried. I did the best I could, honestly. There's so many things that happened in my life. You know, there's many, many things that happen in my life that make me understand that I will forever be treated as a monster. Whatever I do in life, you know, I try to legally change my name. I try to keep a very low profile for many years. This is why I was, you know, people thought I was dead for a while, because I wasn't on social media anymore. I was trying to my best to, you know, be a normal functioning human. But you know, the past always comes back. So was always people recognizing me from somewhere, or you know. So I did my best, and I think it's not for me, this thing. I know other people who've had a similar past and who have been released since, and who have found a way to be I don't know, social beings. Part of society. Yeah, that's the word. But yeah, no, it's not working for me. No, and I truly despise people in general. The more I get old, and the more I have this sense of not belonging anywhere. And maybe the weirdest thing is that I tried, for example, to go to metal shows.
Okay, we're gonna pick up there. Let's stop it right there so we have that one saved.